Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and you have listened a few times before, so you know I like to talk to people who have done something well 10,000 times. And our guest today is someone who I've seen do a thing well a whole bunch of times. We have Justin MacDonald, one of the greatest business coaches you never know you needed. And I got to see him perform at the Monkey Pod Retreat. That's Greg Jenkins' 2-day in-person retreat, and just seeing how JMac took companies and entrepreneurs and helped them see more clearly where they were going. And the percentage, the ahas per minute was more high octane than I think anything I've ever seen. And the funny part is that, of course, JMac, while he does business coaching, he also does a bunch of other stuff, including runs a football coaching company, obviously. And we're talking today about football, and yes, this is American football to my worldwide audience, talking about football and how it relates to business and life and everything else. Welcome to the show, JMac.
What's up, Brian? Thanks for having me. I love the new metric, the new acronym, AHAs per minute, I think. So we've got APMs, CPLs, we've got it all.
AHAs per minute was pretty amazing. When I saw you in action with a client of mine at the Monkey Pod Retreat and just got to see you exercise your craft for helping people see what was true and see what was real and see what could be. It's just incredible because so many of us, I guess by so many, I mean every single person I've ever met, is living inside a box that they've built for themselves. And there are also outside circumstances, but they built a box and they play inside the box. They're in a sandbox and they have their toys and they know which toys are theirs and which toys are not theirs. And they just play in the box. And it's so hard for everybody to look up outside of the sandbox you're in and see like, oh, there's a sandbox over there. And oh, there's a tree I could go climb. And seeing how you help my client go, oh, and just look up, that's such an incredible skill.
Well, your ability to weave a visual metaphor is an incredible skill. That was awesome. I think you're right on the money. We get so focused on that sandbox you're talking about, and we get very familiar with it. And that can be a good thing. Obviously, that's how we create excellence through consistency and repeatability and systems and, being familiar. That's how we get good at something. But also on the other side of that, you can create stagnation, right? Not having fresh ideas and so forth. And so it's so valuable to hear what other people have to say and ultimately see how other people see the world. I think that's where those ahas come from. So it's fun to go hang out in other people's sandboxes.
Yeah, it comes back to balance, which if you are totally focused on your own craft, probably you're missing a lot. There's some people who are just inspired, but most of us, we need the cross-pollination. But if you're totally focused on what someone else is telling you to do or thinks of you, probably you're not living your highest and best. Because one of the things you do as football coach, I thought I'd just humble brag, not humble at all. I once scored a touchdown, and it was in the band football game because I was the marching band guy back in high school. And I just wanted everyone to know that I scored a touchdown once. And that's about the extent of my actually playing football. But I've watched football for years and years and years because I was in the marching band. So I've watched like 5.5 seasons of football. And while the game isn't really my jam if I'm not participating, like by being in the band, it's amazing. I can see just enough to understand that I'm only seeing maybe 10% of what's happening. I don't have eyes to see what good is, even though occasionally I can look and I can say, oh, that person should have done this, or they did that thing, they should have done this thing over here instead. But I think about this balance that it's like watching these two groups of people attempt to dance in this way to achieve this very specific objective. And with your company, quarterback.io, you train people to go understand that balance and get better at this thing. I just love you to talk to us about, and quarterback.io specifically, but also how it is that someone that I know as a business coach also happens to be a football coach. Those are not in my head in the same spot. Mm-hmm. Both of those at once. Go.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is your limited firsthand experience with football, the time you gloriously scored that touchdown. Like, that is the entire point. And I think often it's easy for football coaches and football players because it is such a complex sport and you can really dedicate so much of your time in your life while you're playing it or coaching it to all of the techniques and all of the schemes and all of the, latest in thinking around what position you play or what offense you're running or what's happening in the collegiate or pro. There's just a lot there. There's a whole world. And it's easy to get lost in what's the whole dang point, right? And the whole dang point is, can we score more touchdowns than the opponent? And so, which is, I think, one of my favorite things to do, which is to take this highly complex game. And the position of quarterback is the most complex position in any sport, both schematically and mechanically, the way someone actually throws a football, and help demystify it and simplify it. And that's literally what we what we talk about. And I think there's a definite carryover to business and marketing and sales as we create games around it, and it gets really complicated sometimes. And so at the end of the day, it's just coming back to what are we trying to do again? And in football and at the quarterback position, you're trying to score touchdowns. That's it. And so, helping people understand, hey, all we're trying to do is we're trying to throw touchdowns, not footballs. So don't go out and just play the game and throw footballs because that's what you think you're supposed to do. Throw with intent to score touchdowns. And also, that's the end result. So while we try to create a system or a scheme that's going to be perfectly orchestrated to end up the way that we want, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but if we get the result that we want, we need to take that. We need to be excited about it. So yeah, that's the idea, is to score touchdowns. And in our business, it's how do we serve people, right? How do we serve people? You meet their needs, wow them, get loyal customers, and how do we grow our business in a way that not only serves our customers, but serves us back as the entrepreneur? And when you create an environment that can do that, a great product, a great fulfillment of that product, and you grow that and you grow your employees, your team too, now there's a third beneficiary, right? It's you're serving your customers, you're serving your employees, and that business is serving you back. But only if you keep the main thing, right?
All I want to know, JMac, is where can I buy a t-shirt that says throw touchdowns, not footballs?
Yeah, that's one of the mantras. No t-shirt, yeah.
It struck me like with a physical force, like, whoa, throw touchdowns, not footballs. And then I want to integrate that into what Mark LeBlanc says, who's also a business coach, wrote the Small Book of Sales Success or Business Success. And one of the things he says is that you should not let failures yesterday bleed over in today. Don't feel bad today because, let's say, you didn't make as many sales calls as you were supposed to yesterday. And Mark also says, don't let your successes from yesterday bleed over in today. It doesn't matter that you did all your sales calls. It doesn't matter that all of them were successful yesterday. It's completely irrelevant for what you're doing today. It's like there's these two, they feel opposite, though they're not. There's we throw touchdowns, not footballs, which is focusing on you're not just doing the activity, you are winning, and that's what matters. And then we have don't let the past interfere with today. Don't let winning or losing. Keep on doing what you need to do. What do you think about the balance between those two things?
Oh, I think you could be a football coach. I mean, that's
Mark LeBlanc is a really smart guy. If anyone gets the chance, he runs Achiever Circles, weekend long retreats. Mark LeBlanc, LeBlanc, friend of my mother's for a long time. One of the smartest business people I know. He's like a philosopher, but also a tactician. If you ever get to hear him speak, man, go there. Your brain will just be on fire.
Oh, I think that the principle is awesome principle, and it carries over for sure. We tell our quarterbacks, have a short memory. And it's exactly what you said. Don't get hung up on your bad plays, and don't get hung up on your good plays, right? So it's like enjoy the moment and then move on. And the other saying we have is run the next play. So no matter what, run the next play. You just threw a touchdown, great. When next time you're out there, you've got to get playing again. The game's not over. And same thing, if you just threw an interception, go run the next play. And so you're constantly looking forward and moving forward. And when the time is appropriate, you analyze that self-awareness. How do I get better? What did I do great that I need to continue to leverage? And what can I improve? What mistakes did I make? What do I attribute those mistakes to? Lack of focus, lack of technique, whatever it was. What do I attribute those to? And how do I make sure I don't do that again?
Do you know the phrase Oodaloop?
No.
OODA? Came from a fighter pilot. And the idea is that we're always going through this decision-making cycle of observe, orient, decide, and act. And part of being a fighter pilot is you have to get better at acting before your opponent gets to the act level. And if you can interfere with your opponent's OODA loop, as in you might act while I'm still trying to orient on what my choices are before I even decide what to do next, then you force me to go back to observing because now you're doing something. I better pay attention to it. And it's applicable to everything, right? It's one of those high-level concepts here. There's something you said that brought that to mind around the whole have a short memory thing. It's like you're encouraging people. It's sort of a way of saying have a short OODA loop, that don't spend your energy being proud, right? That you may have just thrown the best touchdown in the world. But if you're spending your energy on congratulating yourself, there's some cutoff, right? There's an appropriate amount. What does Greg Jenkins say? You have to celebrate the milestones. But there's an appropriate. If you have 0, that's bad because then you're beating yourself up or you're not enjoying your victories. If it's too long, you can get a whack. So it goes back to what we were saying earlier about balance. That we need to have that balance.
Yeah, well, you got it. You got it exactly right. And I think it's also knowing where you are in your journey whatever that is, and knowing where you are in your confidence level. The first touchdown you throw in your life, that's a big moment, right? And it's a moment where you realize, hey, all that work and all that stuff I was learning theoretically, it's come together and it worked for me. And wow, it works. And I bet I can do that again. And that builds your confidence. Obviously, same thing in business. And when you've thrown 100 touchdowns, after years of doing it, then it's a different feeling. And what it takes to make sure you're really celebrating those things, it just changes. So it's just an appropriate amount of making sure that you absolutely celebrate your wins and then move on to continuing to grow. That's all. So yeah, you said it right on the money. But yeah, we talk about being a goldfish, short-term memory.
Be a goal. There's so many t-shirts coming out of this one episode. How do you calibrate your level of celebration? I know, both looking at myself and a bazillion people I've coached in the 8 years I've been in business, some people don't celebrate enough and other people celebrate too much. And it seems like as entrepreneurs, we often err on the not celebrating enough side.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh man, I wanted to do these 10 things. This one thing went really well. These other things I got out the door, but oh my goodness, there's 6 things I didn't get done. I'm such a failure. And that's all the time. And I bet you deal with that with football too, right?
Yeah, well, I think you said it. And I think the default for entrepreneurs is to not celebrate enough. So generally speaking, like err on the side of celebrating everything. When it becomes a point of hubris, then it may not be serving you, but it's really important to refuel yourself. I talk about Pac-Man pellets. Like humans work like Pac-Man, gobbling up those little pellets, and you're eating those little pellets, and then there's the bigger pellets that power Pac-Man up, and then he can turn around and actually go eat some of those ghosts for points. Like, so, you get those little daily pellets, when somebody says something positive or, you close a sale or whatever it is, and you get those power up pellets. And that's what keeps you going because we're humans. We need to have those milestones, the micro ones, the medium ones, and the major ones also. So it's just sort of, being appreciative and acknowledging those things because we've worked hard for those things. So it's super important. And ultimately, when it gets to a point that's not serving you or your team, well, that's when it's too much.
I like stickers. I had a wall calendar once and I set myself 4 goals: 1 fitness goal, 1 nature goal, 1 work goal, 1 diet goal. And each one had its own color. And I had just a wall calendar. And so each day, either when I achieved the thing or if it was a don't do this goal, at the end of the day, if I succeeded in not doing the thing, like eating 0 added sugar, I got a sticker. And so it was this insanely simple thing because everything was binary.
Well,
It was, did I work out to the point of sweating? Did I spend 8 or more hours in the office? Did I eat no added sugar of any kind? And did I spend, I think I had like an hour outside in nature or something like that.
mm-hmm.
And so then I could talk about a 4 sticker day. And I could look at the calendar and I could see if I wasn't feeling like I'd been very accomplished, I could look at the calendar. And if I saw, only 5 stickers over the last 5 days, well, that's a problem. Of course, I don't feel very accomplished, but it also limited my world down to these 4 very specific things that had yes or no answers. And so if I wanted to feel better, well, okay, which of these 4 things could I accomplish right now or make progress on not doing?
Oh, I love the binary about it. That makes things simple, right? And I think the important thing is when we fall short of goals we set, the most important thing is to give ourselves a lot of grace, but then also to be accountable and not to beat ourselves up type of accountability, but the accountability that says, just because I didn't reach that goal that I set, I'm not going to ignore the fact that I set a goal and didn't hit it. I'm going to come back at it and I'm going to ask, I'm going to be curious. And this is what I meant earlier when I said, to what do we attribute our successes and our failures to? And when we attribute our successes and our failures to things that are, outside of our control, we're actually teaching ourselves, a sense of helplessness and a sense of disempowerment. When we associate our successes and our failures to things we can control, choices we made, focus, execution, strategy, whatever, we're totally in control. And also it divorces the performance with our own sense of self-worth. If I only made a sale because I'm awesome or I'm talented, if I only throw a touchdown because I'm naturally gifted, well, that means when I don't throw a touchdown, the opposite is true. I must not be naturally gifted. When I don't make a sale or when my business struggles for a month or whatever, it must mean I'm not very good. And that's wrong. And that's a dangerous place to be. So we disassociate our self-worth with the performance by saying, okay, we didn't hit our sales goal or we didn't do X, Y, or Z. And now the curiosity sets in and say, okay, why not? Was it a realistic goal? Was the plan good? And if it was, if those are both true, then great. What didn't we do that needed to have been done that would have had us hit it? And now you know exactly where to look. We didn't do enough business development, or we didn't invest enough in marketing, or our marketing wasn't working and we didn't pivot fast enough. All of those are choices. All of those are things that we can now go work on. So what we associate success and failures with, what we attribute it to, I think is a really important thing. And, that plays on both sides of this conversation, both business and football. And that's a really important thing for someone to learn, is what you associate that to. And that's why a lot of really successful people, naturally gifted or successful people, especially in football and athletics, if you're just there is natural athletic talent, right? There's people that are talented, more talented than others, and that's sort of being gifted. But if the only reason they're successful is because they're more gifted, there's a time when our giftedness, our talentedness sort of reaches its limits, or is stretched for the first time.
In so many areas of my life, I've hit that wall.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped being particularly good at Spanish towards the beginning of my 4th year of studying it in high school, that I'd been naturally gifted and didn't really work hard to earn the first 3 years and change of skill.
Right.
And I was pretty good.
Yep.
And then when it came time to apply myself, guess what? I didn't have the habits. I didn't have the mindset. And then I look at playing trombone. I played trombone for a decade. And I knew people, and I was pretty naturally gifted, I would say, to where I didn't have to practice, which is one of the most terrible things in the world.
Yep.
Because I had colleagues who did practice, and some of them were both naturally gifted and did practice. Maybe some of them weren't that naturally gifted. I don't know. But I remember it was in high school where in jazz band, at a certain level, when you're playing jazz, you start improvising, and there's various music that has improv for various instruments. And I remember that there was an opportunity to improv, and one of my fellow trombonists took it because I wasn't there. I wasn't really good enough, didn't train enough. And I spent so much time, or rather not spent so much time, in the just being good enough. And I didn't understand the game I was playing, really. And then in sword fighting, I did medieval combat for a decade. And so many times in there, I was just good enough, natural athletic ability, natural understanding, been doing it for a while, all these things that I just plateau. And of course, we're constantly, I'm sure it's like in football, you're constantly plateauing and breaking through and plateauing and breaking through. Bruce Lee says there's no limits, only plateaus. And I'd be going against people, and maybe I'd be with a peer, and we'd be fighting in the tournaments each week. And I would lose, and I'd be, so angry about it, so angry, frustrated. And my teacher would say, well, they were training this one thing this last week, and they were training the entire week just to beat you. And then they did, because they saw your weakness. Oh, and by the way, I coached them on how to do it because you weren't training. Like, horrible. And yet so true, that when I trained hard, shockingly, other people got worse. I didn't feel like I got any better, really, but other folks got worse when I trained hard in this one-on-one combat thing. It's like skill is a liability, whereas if you have just discipline and persistence, well, it's like Jocko says. Jocko says he wasn't particularly good at anything. Jocko Willing, for folks who do not follow Jocko's stuff, Navy SEAL, speaker, author, etc. He says he wasn't good at anything. He didn't need much sleep. That's about the only thing he was good at. And so he just had to really work at everything. And then he got good at everything because all he could do was be more disciplined than the next person and need less sleep. And that was it.
Yeah, I got another t-shirt for you. You may have heard this one too, but it definitely is in our football world. And it's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's not a t-shirt. That is a wall poster. That is a plaque. That is a forehead tattoo. Say that again.
Yeah, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Oof.
And it sounds like, first off, can we all just take a second? You said medieval sword fighting first.
Yes. For about a decade, I was involved in the Empire Medieval Pursuits, where we wore 40 or 50 pounds of armor, mostly metal. It's basically MMA, so mixed martial arts with all the kickboxing and all that, plus wearing armor, plus sticks that are pretending to be swords or spears or daggers. And I fought all around the country, fought in Oregon and fought in Florida and fought in Idaho and Montana, and just got to go fight all over the place. And that was a key part of life in my 20s, and eventually stopped for a variety of reasons. Among them, I was concerned about concussions. And as I came to understand more about brain damage, which perhaps in football you can relate to this, I thought, okay, how many microconcussions have I actually sustained over the years? And am I sure that in this sport, which occasionally I've won tournaments by headbutting the other person into submission, and we're wearing 10 or 15 pound steel helmets, and I've headbutted someone in their helmet so hard they gave up. So you might know me as sort of mild-mannered, maybe, I don't know. But there was a time
Mm.
when I was somewhat more aggressive in some parts of my life. Shockingly, a guy in his 20s, somewhat more aggressive than a guy in his 30s. I know, call the presses, call the newspapers.
Wow.
It was interesting, though. I learned a lot about excellence
Yeah.
from my teacher and from a lot of other excellent people who are just in the pursuit of excellence. And then my teacher went on to be one of the leaders of Team USA at the Olympics of sword fighting called Battle of the Nations. And he is known across the entire world as the American. He's the most famous American sword fighter in the world. And he's known everywhere because he's one of the best that has ever lived, which sounds like an exaggeration until you know, like, he is called the American because he wears distinctive armor and is one of the leaders of Team USA.
That's amazing. All about that sounds amazing.
I just got lucky with having the right teacher. I came across the right teacher through no fault of my own. And having the right teacher who can point in the right direction and say, you want to go there, or you don't want to go over there. And that's just like, yes, I put in 10 years of effort, but having the right teacher at the right points in time to guide me was utterly critical. There's no way I could have gone anywhere close to where I did without having him as a teacher.
Well, two thoughts. I got a question, but the first thought is what you just said, which is the importance of a teacher or a coach. And I feel like that's true no matter what. So you talked about quarterbacks earlier. You know, we coach junior high, high school, collegiate quarterbacks, but the NFL players have coaches. Tom Brady, the best quarterback in history, he has a quarterback coach, right? So, and I think the same thing is true for entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur and I coach and I have a coach. And so I think there's something really, really important about, well, it's what we talked about earlier with the sandbox, having somebody see the world and see your world with a different lens and be able to ask questions and help you see things that you may not be able to see. And a lot of times seeing yourself. So I think there's a lot of value. What you just said, your excellence came from being pushed and being guided and being coached in all those different ways. So I think having a coach, that's it. I think an important takeaway, not feeling alone on your journey.
There's having the right coach, there's having the right peer group, and there's having the right students. One of the things about sword fighting that was a part of our big culture in my local group was training the newbies, in which newbies defined as everyone more junior than you, basically. Mm-hmm. And so the main teacher, he did a little bit of the basic training, but generally it was sort of our middle cadre of guys who knew something, but not as much as the really good ones. They were taking the new people just to the most basic thing, like how do you actually stand? How do you breathe? My goodness, it takes 2 to 3 years to learn how to breathe when you're sword fighting.
Wow.
I got told this when I started fighting. I was like, I'm better than that. I'm a fast learner. I'm a trombonist. I'll be fine. Turns out, JMac, it takes 2 to 3 years to learn how to breathe. It's just shocking.
Talk about fundamentals.
And if I didn't fight for a little while, fundamentals. If I didn't fight for a little while and then I'd go back in and I wasn't really in great shape, I would have somehow magically forgotten how to breathe. Which, if you're doing a martial art, everyone listening, take this home, put it on your fridge. Breath is important. If you don't breathe, you will lose. Shocking.
Wow. I think the metaphor is there in and of itself, right? The importance of fundamentals. And often, I think you even said it, some of the hubris or impatience with fundamentals, like even breathing. Again, it goes back to overcomplicating things and just getting back to what are we trying to have happen here? What do we want to have happen? And do we have the fundamentals in place to give ourselves an opportunity for that to happen? And if you can't breathe, you're not going to do well in a hand-to-hand melee, at all. So it's fundamentals. I think that's awesome for you to call that out. And the same thing's true, talking about quarterback earlier, it's the same stuff. It's fundamentals. It really is fundamentals. And there's some amazing things. There's so much complexity. There's so much happening in a very short period of time. We measure what happens in a quarterback's world. We measure in the middle of a play. We measure in tenths of seconds, right? I mean, so we're trying to shave a tenth of a second here and a tenth of a second there. So a lot happens in a really short period of time. And it's fundamental stuff, platform balance, how we grip the football, eye progressions, what they're looking at, and then responding to the chaos that's all around them and the people that are trying to impart some physical harm to them. And, so it's all about having a plan, executing that plan, and then being agile when that plan, starts to break down, which is actually, that was going to be my question to you. You talked about excellence a minute ago, and you're talking about sword fighting, you're talking about a coach. Have you ever had a perfect fight?
Oh, when you said that, a fight came to mind where I was in a tournament. So a bunch of folks watching, like, I don't know, 50 people watching, something like that, one-on-one. And I remember fighting this guy where I got insulted. I felt angry at him because he was being so rude because he wasn't even trying. Here we are halfway through a tournament, like a one-on-one double elimination kind of thing. And he's moving so slowly. It's like he's moving through water. And I thought, is he just insulting me? And after I won, because he was barely, his shield was moving, he's just so slow. And this was not a bad fighter. This is not some new person. I talked to my teacher and I said, like, this guy was just playing with me. Why did he want to lose? And my teacher said, you have leveled up. Enjoy it while it lasts. It's not permanent. But that experience of everyone else has started to move slowly, and you can see everything they're going to do, and nothing surprises you anymore. And I went, oh, now that was maybe in my third or fourth year fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I ever had a fight quite like that again. So it's like this, where does enlightenment come from? Well, it's not permanent.
Yeah.
Maybe it is for some people. Like my teacher, as far as I can tell, my teacher experienced those kinds of fights with almost everyone. 99 out of 100 people. He could actually list off the people in the country that were not so slow that he knew everything they were going to do, because he knew everything. He could experience how you're breathing, where your feet are, the glint of the sun on your helmet, everything. He felt everything. And so he knew everything. In that one fight, I felt everything. And then, of course, like all enlightenment, I then, after some time, drifted off that and went back to, crap, I forgot how to breathe. And back to the most basic mistakes.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that, this idea of perfection versus excellence and them not being the same thing. You know, the quest for perfection itself being elusive, but the quest is what I think helps us rise to excellence. I think there's those rare moments when the stars align where something feels perfect, but I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, it's not going to happen often, and if it does, it will be elusive. And just being okay with excellence, and that's one of the things we always talk to quarterbacks about is, like, shoot for perfection and settle for excellence, because you're not going to have perfection, but that's what we're trying to create. And then there's this interesting paradox or balance or contradiction of shooting for perfection, acknowledging you won't get it, but still striving regardless, and then having a lot of grace in that pursuit, having a lot of grace when you do screw up. There's a lot of duality in that quest for excellence, balanced with grace for messing up or underperforming or having a bad day or whatever it is. And I think grace is one of the more important, I guess, variables that I have added to my repertoire of being a human somewhere on this journey here. I didn't live with a lot of grace as an athlete for myself, for others, or as a coach in athletics, and then the same as a professional and in business, not a lot of grace. And I think grace is an important one, that understanding and that empathy and that forgiveness, and balancing that with accountability and excellence and performance. It's a hard duality to live in, or tension to manage, but I think it's essential.
You're reminding me of Marksmanship, where I'm a junior instructor with a rifle marksmanship group called the Appleseed Project. And we take people in 2 days and get them from, in some cases, never shot a gun before, to can accurately shoot at 25 yards, a pretty small size on a target. And one of the things we say in Appleseed is the target never lies.
Right.
No matter what you think you did or why you think it happened, the target will tell you the truth, because the target loves you. Yeah. We don't say the target loves you, but we should. The target loves you. And that's when the target will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And then we say, okay, well, there's a 6 steps of firing the shot, or here's the 10 points of this thing over here. Follow what you're told to do, follow the fundamentals, and then you will have a result. And even if the result is not what you want, trust that your coaches, the instructors, will be able to help you get there, because we're going to look at exactly what you're doing and are you following the exact steps. Now, marksmanship is, at least at short range kind of stuff, it is a very simple system. There's a relatively small number of variables. So it actually is possible to say, we will find out exactly what is wrong and tell you exactly what to practice. Even if you can't learn to shoot well this weekend, we will tell you exactly what to do. They're like, go into business, there's a million variables. It's so variable. But marksmanship, it's just, and you got to have the grace. If you get angry at the fact that you didn't score what you wanted to score, there's no chance that will help you get better. You can't carefully shoot angrily, right? You got to go be still. Do everything right, and then be still in your body, shoot at a high level between your heartbeats, and just be, flow with the gun, flow with the rifle, flow with the target, feel the wind, and just be there, and don't be distracted by, are you succeeding or failing?
There's something reassuring about sports, athletics, and some of those. There's some concreteness to it. Like, you talked about the target doesn't lie. Since we were starting to chat about football and quarterbacking, I'll relate one back. We tell quarterbacks that the ball doesn't go where you want it; it goes where you throw it.
Oh, another
Yeah,
t-shirt.
yeah, yeah.
Can someone please make, I don't know, well, there's a dozen JMac isms. The ball doesn't go where you want it. The ball goes where you throw it. Ouch.
It's the same thing, right? It's like, hey, if it didn't go where I wanted, what did I do that put it there? Your opinion doesn't matter. The ball's the result of the physics. And so, same thing. There's I'm sure, a lot of similar mechanical principles in shooting and throwing because it's the same kind of stuff, right? Vectors and trajectories and velocity and all those things. And so, there's definitely some of that. And it's reassuring. Business isn't always the same. Business has a lot of variables, and that can be more unsettling, right? And there's something simple and relatively binary about other things. And so, the things we do outside of our businesses, I think there's something really refreshing getting out of our business and playing a game where it's like, I know that if I put one foot in front of the other and go on this run, I know that I'm going to feel great at the end. I know I'm going to get where I'm going. Like, there's no doubt about it. I know if I go to the gym and I lift this weight, I'm going to sweat. I'm going to feel good. Whatever that thing is, I know if I, cooking or hiking or whatever, archery and I think there's something really valuable for us to have those passions and those other things and those things that where we can control something and know we can get a really predictable response because business can be so unpredictable.
Would you like to know how to climb a mountain, JMac?
Yes, please.
Keep walking uphill.
Yeah.
Just don't stop walking. I was once going up to Camp Muir in Mount Rainier. It was a training hike and I was really ill, like probably food poisoning, though possibly altitude sickness. And I was going really slow. In this particular hike, you can tell exactly how good a shape you're in based on how long it takes you. And if you're doing 4 hours or under, you're in amazing shape. 4 to 5 hours is pretty normal. 5 to 6 is like, I'm not sure. You're not in very good shape. 6+ is something is seriously wrong with you. You don't belong here.
Yeah.
And it took me over 7 hours. Like, I was ill. And one of the guys in our group stayed next to me because he's a really sweet guy. And he said, I'll climb a mountain with you any day because you don't bitch and you don't stop. I ended up vomiting. I was so out of it. I ended up shivering in my sleeping bag for a long time. The rest of the team considered dragging me down the mountain that night to try to get me to safety. I was so out of it that a stove exploded inside the hut we were in. They threw this flaming stove out the door that was next to my face. I did not wake up as the hut filled with smoke and fire. Fun times mountaineering, folks. Mountaineering is very safe. It's very reliable. No, it's exciting. But the whole don't stop, that if you just keep on going, then you will eventually get there. You just have to keep on going within the boundaries, which goes back to the sandbox thing. You have to have the right boundaries. If you go in the wrong direction, like again, back to Mount Rainier, people die there every year. And a lot of them that die because they're coming down from Camp Muir and it got dark out or got foggy out and they didn't have the tools to know you have to stay on this one piece of the terrain. If you go off that side, that's crevasses. You will die. If you go off this side, there's steep falls and eventually more crevasses. You will die. As long as you stay in between, like this 1/4 mile of terrain as you walk down, you'll be fine. But if you fall outside the bounds, you might kill yourself. And so you have to know how to stay inside the boundaries. And the folks who don't, it is dangerous. And that feels like everything else we're talking about, having the right boundaries, having a coach to help you set the boundaries, and then staying within the boundaries while just being dedicated to the practice.
What do you think? I think you're right. So in Mount Rainier, like the terrain is defined for you. This is a safe path. Off this path is not safe, the boundaries. What do you think? Is there a universal safe path or boundaries in business? Like when in doubt, just keep doing this?
Definitely not. I think that it depends on who you are. And even the same person with the same skill set, plop them down in 10 years apart and it'll be totally different. Even if you're doing something that seems very straightforward, like running an espresso stand, a one-person espresso stand. Everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. It's the simplest thing, or even mowing lawns, very simple activities. If you did something 10 years ago and you did the same thing today, you would probably not be successful because things have changed, even in the most basic of things. So I think it probably has to do with some amount of building the right systems and having a talent stack you are pursuing. Have you read Scott Adams' work on talent stacks?
No.
It's about what it sounds like. Scott, and this is the guy who writes Dilbert, who's also a philosopher, business philosopher, etc. On Twitter, as Scott Adams says, he talks about talent stacks, and he says he's not a great cartoonist. He's a good enough cartoonist. He's not the funniest person in the world, but he's pretty funny. he's not very good at doing stuff on audio or like doing visual stuff, but he's been doing periscopes for every day, once or twice a day for, I don't know, well over a year now. And he says, what you got to do is figure out what talent stack do you actually want to have to get yourself where you want to go. And don't rely on being amazing at one thing, because the chances are you're not. You're probably not incredible. You're probably not the best in class at something. But you can get to be like in the top half of almost anything. I don't even drink coffee. I could be in the top half of people who make an okay cup of coffee. I could do that. And there's a bunch of other things I could do to run a coffee stand that would make me better than average. And then you put all those together. And so like right now, as we're recording this, something like 70 something episodes of Redbird Radio are up. And when I started, I said, I know that when I look back at the first episodes, I'm going to be embarrassed. Because the alternative is, if you look back and you're not embarrassed at the work you brought into the world a year or two ago, that means you're not growing, which I'm so sorry for you, that your skills aren't getting better. But if you know you're going to be embarrassed, then you should just start now. Unless you're so horrible you're not going to serve your clients at all, you should just start. You should throw the football for the first time. And you're not going to make a touchdown. It's okay. You're going to be embarrassed. It's okay. You might as well just start and then accept that looking backwards, you're going to have sucked in the past. I don't even know what your question was now. I've forgotten.
When in doubt, always do this. Is there a safe path?
Right. The closest truth I have is understand talent stacks and understand what talent stack will actually serve the people you choose to serve and make you happy. I write about this some in my book, The Impact Framework, which is available free at redbeardimpact.com. And I talk about how you have to marry together message and platform and tribe while also marrying together inspiration, action, and change to go have a path for people. And as long as you have some clue of who your tribe is you're trying to serve, you can look at what is the impact process you're going for of inspiring people, getting them to take a small action all the way to a long-term change. And then you can say, okay, what kind of talent stack would I have to be able to best do that for those people? And then pursue that. I have no idea what's in the talent stack for you or for anybody else, because it can be quite profoundly different. But that particular process, I think, is key.
I think you hit right on the genetic code, regardless of the circumstance, the industry, the context, or whatever. You talked about serving your customers or your clients. So when in doubt, provide value. That's always going to be true. And so does your service provide value? Does your marketing provide value? Does your product provide value? I think that's the first and primary thing. And then it's just getting clear on, great, how do I want to go do that in a way that serves my clients and also serves me, and so that the business serves me back. So getting clear on, is there value? You can reverse engineer. Great. What skills do I need? What mindset do I need? How do I tweak my product, or how do I tweak my marketing, or whatever it is? But at the end of the day, value is the only currency of opportunity. And so I think you're right on the money. I think that is the universal truth.
One more t-shirt, folks. Value is the currency of opportunity. I really do want someone to take all these great JMac-isms out and send them to me in a list, because that's incredible. JMac, we've been talking for 40 minutes on a podcast that's usually 20 minutes per episode, because you're so fun to talk to. If other folks want to talk to you about your business work, your quarterback stuff, all the other stuff you do, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, for any quarterback stuff, we're at quarterback.io. I'm at Coach Mac at quarterback.io. Instagram is quarterback.io. If there's any business related stuff, you can hit me up there too. But we've got our stuff going in Africa at African Leadership Group. So if somebody's got questions, they can reach out to me and get me there at jmacdonald@alx.app.
Wonderful. Thank you for being on the show.